Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step. You got to go around the other way. That's okay. Watch your step as you step into the stand.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Griffin. Will you please introduce yourself to our jury and then spell your name for the record?
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Tom Griffin, Griffin.
Mr. Griffin, what do you do for work?
I'm a private forensic consultant in bloodstain pattern analysis, crime scene investigation, and reconstruction.
What kind of experience do you have in crime scene investigation, reconstruction, and bloodstain pattern analysis?
I spent 4 years as a crime scene investigator and forensic chemist with the Greeley, Colorado Police Department. I left there and then spent 29 years at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation Denver office, where I did forensic chemistry, but also headed a crime scene unit and did bloodstain pattern analysis, both on scenes and on evidential material that was submitted to the laboratory.
What kind of educational background do you have?
I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and then 4 years of graduate work in chemistry. I left that to go into the field of forensics, where I've taken numerous courses, particularly in bloodstain pattern analysis, 6 courses over the years of my time in the field.
Who are you currently employed by?
I'm a private consultant, so I have my own company. I formed after I left the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and I'm also a partner in a forensic consulting and training company out of Oklahoma City, Bevel, Gardner and Associates.
Do you have ongoing training that you participate in to make sure you stay sharp and abreast of any changes in the field?
I do. I attend conferences in bloodstain pattern analysis primarily. One is the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts, meets yearly across the country. Also the International Association for Identification, it meets yearly as well. And I attend workshops there, as well as have taught since 2001, approximately 80 workshops in bloodstain pattern analysis for those 2 forensic associations.
Do you have certifications in bloodstain pattern analysis?
I do. The International Association for Identification began a bloodstain pattern certification program in 1999. I have maintained my certification in that and also served for 14 years on their certification board.
What about professional affiliations? Do you have any affiliations that go along or hand in hand with your bloodstain pattern analysis?
I do. A current member of the International Association for Bloodstain Pattern Analysts, or of Bloodstain Pattern Analysis. I became a distinguished member there in 2011. And I'm also a lifetime member, meaning I've been in the organization more than 25 years, for the International Association for Identification, where I became a distinguished member there in 2016, and have also been involved in a Colorado-based group, the Rocky Mountain Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts, since its finding or forming in 1983.
Have you received awards in this field?
Yes, I have.
Go ahead and tell the jury.
The International Association for Bloodstain Pattern Analysis distinguished member was voted upon by the membership. It's not earned in that sense by applying for it. It's awarded by the membership. And I've also, for my distinguished membership in the International Association for Identification, I had to show evidence of participation in workshops, publication of articles in literature, and training as well.
So you alluded to my next question, which is, have you produced publications regarding bloodstain pattern analysis and crime scene reconstruction?
I have primarily two, both in bloodstain pattern analysis.
When were those publications done?
The primary one was, I believe, in 2010, excuse me. An article I co-authored on the foundations of bloodstain pattern analysis for the Journal of Forensic Identification. And then in the mid-1980s, I co-authored an article in the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts newsletter.
Okay. Have you testified as an expert witness in bloodstain pattern analysis and crime scene reconstruction?
Yes, sir.
How many times?
Just over 50 times now in that field.
What jurisdictions?
Mostly Colorado, 5 other states since I went as a private consultant, and a few times in federal court in Denver.
Who, I guess when I say who, I mean what agencies or parties have retained you to work in bloodstain pattern analysis during your career?
When I was with the Griffin Police Department, it was cases that came in to that agency. When I was with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, there were cases that came in submitted from law enforcement agencies, as well as call outs to scenes at the request of law enforcement agencies. Since that time as a private consultant, I have responded to requests and worked for district attorneys, private attorneys, defense attorneys, and some law enforcement agencies.
Who pays you for that type of work?
It would be the agency that hires me.
So have you been hired by both prosecution efforts and defense experts?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I said experts, I meant defense parties is what I really meant to say.
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I'd move for qualification of Mr. Griffin as an expert witness in bloodstain pattern analysis and crime scene reconstruction.
Defense? No objection. The witness will be so qualified. Go ahead.
Mr. Griffin, what I'd like to do first, just so that we're all talking the same language, is go over some terminology. So what do you mean when you say the words crime scene reconstruction?
Crime scene reconstruction is a specialized field that looks at physical evidence that may include bloodstains, include other forensic fields such as DNA, firearms, shooting reconstruction, medical reports, autopsy reports. And by studying that information, the reconstruction's aim is to determine a best sequence of events and support events happening or not happening, and in response often to particular questions put out by attorneys and investigators.
When you're testifying in these types of scenarios and you're asked to do work in a particular type of case, are the parties paying for the type of opinion you render in a particular investigation?
No, sir. I only charge for my time, not my opinion in any way.
Okay. When we talk about bloodstain pattern analysis, tell the jury what we mean when we use those words.
Bloodstain pattern analysis is the examination of bloodstains, bloodstain patterns, their size, shape, distribution, location, scene context, and using physical characteristics of those stains and patterns, identify the nature of the pattern and then possible events that may have produced any given pattern.
What is a spatter stain?
When I use the term spatter stain, I'm referring to any small blood stain, generally circular to elliptical, that was formed as a result, as a result of some motion putting blood into flight.
What about a non-spatter stain? What is that?
Non-spatter stain is a larger category that includes stains not containing only circles and ellipses, but smeared blood, pools of blood, absorbed blood, any blood or blood stain pattern that has something besides just circles and elliptical blood stains in it.
Can you tell a jury about any limitations of blood stain pattern analysis?
It's only as good as the documentation to start with. And its goal is looking at sequence and possible events or mechanisms. It won't tell us whose blood it is, for example. Generally won't tell us how long blood has been on a surface. And the other limitations are what is available on scene, if it's a scene that we go to do the analysis, or what's the nature of the photographs and diagrams that we've had supplied to us, as well as other evidence that may be available for viewing.
As far as data that you're using to make your analysis and ultimately reach a conclusion, is best practices to have digital photographs taken and also a scene visit?
When possible, yes.
Is it typical for you to, while you're working on a particular case, to even review autopsy reports?
Most definitely. I make it a requirement before I'll issue a bloodstain report, asking for copies of autopsy reports, since the nature of wounds, particularly bloodletting wounds, is a key component in looking at what possible events may produce stains and patterns.
What if there's no body? Can you still do your bloodstain pattern analysis without having access to a body and the evidence it might have, as well as an autopsy report?
I can and have. It's limited or produces the limitation not having wound information available.
When we're talking about limitations, again, on how effective your work can be in bloodstain pattern analysis, what if a scene has been wiped down or cleaned in some way? Can that cause limitations in what you can decipher from the clues you see on scene?
Yes.
In what way?
Anything that removes bloodstains or alters their appearance affects the physical characteristics of those bloodstains and limits perhaps even identifying patterns that are present, and then further limits concluding what type of events may have produced a given pattern or series of stains.
Okay. How did you become involved in the investigation of Gannon Stauch's disappearance?
On February 18th of 2020, Lieutenant McHollow,
Mahalko?
thank you.
Yep.
Called me telling me about the case and asking if I would be available to look at some pictures and possibly help them with a case.
Do you remember specifically what question you were asked to look into as it relates to that call on February 18th?
Primarily, if examination of photos and eventually the scene would help identify possible events or mechanisms that may have been responsible for producing blood stains on the scene.
So essentially, what may have caused these blood stains to be present in this particular bedroom?
Yes, sir.
What information did you have at that point regarding relevant factors that you may have to consider as you start your analysis?
At that point, the information was minimal. I was told that there was no body, Gannon's body was not available, no apparent weapons, and on February 22nd, I received a flash drive that had over 350 digital images of various aspects of the residence and began looking at those bloodstained pictures.
Did you look at all of those images that you got on that flash drive?
I did.
Did that lead you to any sort of, at least at that stage, any sort of preliminary conclusions as to what you, the scope and what you are dealing with?
Very preliminary in that the stains I was seeing in the photographs were very small. So I was primarily seeing spatter stains, and at that point, couldn't say anything more without additional examination or information.
Okay. Did you in fact actually end up going out to that particular scene?
Yes, I did, on February 26th of 2020.
Tell the jury what you did on the scene that particular day, and then I'll ask you some follow-up questions about that.
I arrived on scene accompanied by FBI Special Agent DeFrance, whom I had met and carpooled with from Denver. And we arrived at the residence approximately 10:10 that day, met with CSI Beresford and then Sergeant Hubble, and we all entered the residence at 10:15. And Sergeant Hubble walked us through preliminarily or showing preliminary aspects of the residence for us. And then my attention was focused in the bedroom that I was told was Gannon's bedroom.
In your review prior to getting on scene, did you have a chance to look through Alyssa Beresford's photographs that she took of the scene that included evidence markers that were stuck to the wall in different areas inside that scene?
I did have some, yes, sir.
Okay. And just so you're aware, there's a binder on the table in front of you. And we're going to be referencing some of those photos. So already admitted in that binder is people's 528 through 678. And I just wanted to orient you to that as well. And when we get to that point, I'll ask you to flip through that and find us some pictures, okay?
Okay.
With that pre-existing information in mind, so you've looked at pictures, including Beresford's evidence photos with the markers on them. What are you thinking as you go through the scene on February 26th? What's going through your mind?
Primarily to make sure I stay objective in my approach and scientific. So I looked at the stains there on primarily south and east walls of the bedroom, along the baseboards too, compared what I was seeing in person with images supplied by CSI Beresford. I didn't do any type of magnification of the images. The images on the wall, excuse me, not the images, the stains on the wall were all a millimeter or less in size. And for reference, since the US doesn't do metric very well, the edge of a US dime is approximately a millimeter thick. So the stains I was looking at were as narrow or narrower than the edge of a dime. and knew that I would have the photos that I could enlarge for subsequent examination if that became necessary.
Yep. Were you aware that prior to you getting on scene, that there was a bed in that southeast corner of that particular bedroom, Gannon's bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Had you seen pictures of that, including a picture of Gannon lying in that bed prior to you going out to the scene?
Pictures of the bed on scene, yes, I believe so, but of Gannon, no. I didn't see that picture until I was there on February 26th.
Okay, so you saw the picture of Gannon in bed on February 26th.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So did that help you as you're looking at this scene and doing your analysis to know, I guess, height of that bed and that sort of thing?
Primarily just the general position or location in the room of the bed.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is, were there blood stains on the walls that were both above and below the height of that bed?
Yes, sir, there were.
Was that to some degree helpful for you in doing your analysis of this case?
Yes, there were 54 labels that CSI Beresford had put on the the south and east walls, each with a scale and a number. And in looking at all of those and comparing to the photos that I had, could see that there were between 2 and 3 dozen stains that were below stains on the walls that were below the reported height of the bed.
Do you remember by placard number or sticker number specifically which items were below the height of the bed?
I don't remember. I'd need to refer to my report on that, sir.
Okay, perfect. If you refer to your report, would that refresh your memory on that point?
It would.
Or may he refresh his memory using his report?
May, go ahead.
Your Honor, may I read the label numbers from my report?
Just the label number so that
Yes.
the attorneys know what you're referring to. That's okay.
Yes. Thank you. On the east wall, A1, A2, stains A9 through A21, A24 through A27, A30, and B5. And on the other wall, the stains are A34, A36 through A44, and A46.
Okay. And what I want to do is, just so that we can have the jury following along with us, is using that binder, can you find the exhibit that you think would be best to give us an overall view of those walls, and then have you point some of those things out for us? And it's probably going to be more towards the top of that stack as opposed to deep in there, because it starts out wide and then gets more narrowed.
The ones I'm finding for the first wall, People's Exhibit 558 and People's Exhibit 563.
Okay, so we're going to project People's Exhibit 558, which was previously emitted under crime scene investigator Alyssa Beresford on the screen behind you. I'm going to leave it to your preference, whether it's easier for you to describe by looking at the photo in front of you and just talking about it, or if you want to stand up and point to things on the screen, you can do that as well. There should be a pointer in the witness stand. And so actually, let's go to 540 first to get a better overall view so we can then drill into where we are here. Okay, so we've got 540 on the screen behind you, which is an overview photo of that bedroom, correct?
Yes, sir.
When we look at 558, point out which wall we're going to be looking at in 558. Nope, I need this picture up. There we go.
People's Exhibit 558 is primarily going from the upper right-hand corner down the wall and extending over to just at the electrical outlet.
I'm going to compliment you. You've got longer arms than most of the witnesses I've been here during this trial. You can feel free if it's easier instead of stretching to stand up and point.
Okay.
Your preference. Okay, so now let's jump into 558. Okay, so describe what we're looking at for the jury as far as generally stains that are above the bed and stains that are below the bed based on what you just gave us.
I may refer to my list again.
So let me ask you this question. What you're asking to refer to, is that your report that you generated based on your analysis in this case?
Yes, sir.
Is it an expert report?
Yes, sir.
What things do you rely upon to create your expert report?
Information that I receive, photographs I receive, documents such as autopsy reports, lab reports. When I do an on-scene analysis, I have that information I bring into play. And I then examine, analyze the blood stains, look to characterize them, and ultimately issue a written report on my findings.
Okay. And as an expert in this field, is it common for you to rely on all of those things and your expert report as you're talking about what you find and your ultimate conclusions?
Yes, sir, particularly if I'm dealing with particular stains or groups of stains.
Is the information that you relied upon in this case, including all of these stickers that are all over the walls in Gannon's room signifying blood spatter, is that a fairly voluminous amount of information?
Yes, we're talking 54 stains on 2 walls.
And how many pictures would you guess were used by you to make an examination of these walls?
54 pictures, one of each labeled area on the bedroom walls, and then additional photographs of blood stains on baseboard, the bottom of the walls, and then area of the flooring in that same southeast corner of the bedroom.
Each one of those, I'm going to use words that you might not agree with. So if I use words that you don't agree with, make sure you tell me, okay? Those stickers that are on the walls that look like little rulers, you see what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Do each one of those stickers have individual numbering sequence to identify separate and distinct blood stain patterns, or blood stains, I should say.
Let me. Not the arrows, no, but rather the scales adjacent to some of the arrows. It's these individual metric scales that have identifiers for labeling each of those adhesive strips.
So when you say there's 54 stains, does that mean there's 54 stickers, one sticker essentially for each one of those stains?
Yes, there are 54 stickers, most of them by a single stain, but there are some that were by more than one stain.
And then you mentioned the arrow stickers. What are the arrow stickers for?
Would have to ask the person taking the photo of that.
Okay, so there's 54 stickers for the blood stains on there, and then a number of arrows on the wall that Alyssa Beresford or somebody else might have put there.
Yes, sir.
The pictures that we're looking at, especially as you look at Alyssa Beresford's photos, do they start out wide like this and then start to drill down in closer focus to finally you get a very up close view of a specific stain and sticker?
Yes, sir.
So would you say there are hundreds of pictures of this particular crime scene to get that detail starting out wide and then coming in focus?
At least 100, if not more. Yes.
Okay. And so when you ask about, can you refer to your expert report, is it common for you to rely on that to make sure that what you're testifying to is accurate and making sure the jury understands what you're saying?
Yes, sir. If I'm getting into detailed information about locations of stains relative to some object or questions about any particular stain.
And so, Your Honor, based on that, I would ask that he have freedom to just reference his report, just as long as he tells us that he's referencing his report.
That's fine.
So when I was asking you before we went on that slight tangent, can you point to us on the wall, this being that eastern wall in Gannon's bedroom, generally which stains are below the bed level in Gannon's room on this eastern wall?
I'll need to compare the photos since reading the labels, stain numbers aren't very visible.
That's fine. Just make sure you tell us which exhibit you're looking at so that I can put that particular photo up and our record is clear.
Using People's Exhibit 558. We're talking, I'm using the pointer here, few inches above the electrical outlet. The stains that are at or below the height of the bed extend from a couple of inches above the electrical outlet down.
What does that tell you when you're looking at a scene like this, that there's stains both above in below a bed that should have been in place in that corner?
That in order to create spatter stains, the blood source has to be, at least for some of the spatter stains, below where the top of the bed would be.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what we mean when we use the phrase nonlinear spatter?
Looking at physical characteristics as a scientific approach to bloodstain pattern analysis, after determining if there are just spatter stains present, I then look for one of two physical characteristics. The first is, do any of the stains have a linear or curvilinear relationship? And if I find stains exhibiting that, I then examine them more closely, looking at their shapes in particular. If there is no linearity apparent, the next criteria I use is looking at the presence or absence of a radiating distribution, meaning do the blood stains originate low at a point and then spread out, similar to what would happen with the axle of a wheel and the spokes of a bike coming out, or the analogy that seems to work best with classes that I teach is to imagine a triangular slice of pizza and the blood source is down at the tip and the radiating pattern is going out along the rest of the pizza slice towards the crust and the edge. And if neither of those criteria are present, then I stop and call the classification as non-linear bloodstains.
How did you classify these bloodstains?
They were non-linear.
What does that tell you as a bloodstain pattern analysis expert?
That eliminates the presence of or the identification of patterns based on the size, shape, and distribution of those stains, keeping in mind any possibility for some type of removal or stains falling off and things like that.
When you were out at the scene, and potentially even as you're looking at photos of this particular scene, these walls and the floor and whatnot, baseboards, could you tell whether there had been any cleanup efforts undertaken by someone prior to you being involved in this investigation?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about that, please.
I noticed primarily along the baseboards, the appearance of diluted blood, some of it flowing along a horizontal surface or edge of a baseboard. That suggests a possibility of some type of diluting action on the blood stains, example of which would be some type of cleanup or removal.
I'm going to have you pull up a particular photo here. Let me pull it up here in my list. If you flip in that binder that's in front of you to 647 and then beyond that, those should be pictures of the baseboard that were admitted under CSI Alyssa Beresford. Are you at that point?
I am, sir.
And so what I would like you to do is identify a good picture that we can project up there, and you can describe what you're talking about with the cleanup efforts, the signs of a cleanup effort, I should say. I'm sure there's nothing more fun than flipping through a binder with about 50 sets of eyes on you.
A good example would be People's Exhibit 659.
Okay, we're going to put that that photograph up on the screen behind you. I think you have to turn the lid on that thing, otherwise it,
And be
or maybe
careful
not.
when you open it because it comes out fast.
Thank you, Ron.
While testifying, we like to give you dexterity tests as well.
I'll take all the hints.
So, Mr. Griffin, we've got 659 on the screen behind you. So please stand up and use that pointer and point out what we're talking about with the signs that you see in this particular photo that signify a cleanup effort had been undertaken.
Looking at two aspects primarily. The first is along the top of the baseboard, which I'm using the pointer to show as far as for the record. And then down on the vertical surface of the baseboard, just above the easel, where there appears to be, again, diluted blood across the surface of the baseboard at that part.
Are all the jurors able to see with that easel in the way, or do we need to move it for anybody? Everybody's good? Okay. So what about those particular blood stains tell you that there's some cleanup?
They appear to be diluted from the dark reddish brown color normally I find for blood on scenes.
The other pictures of the baseboard, are they similar to this where they have that potential flow and even potentially some wiped marks?
There are a couple, yes.
Okay.
This is probably the best one.
Okay. And all these photos will be available for the jury to look at some point when they get to a deliberation stage. Were any of the blood stains on the walls drip stains?
No, if I may explain drip stains.
So I was going to ask you to explain drip stains.
One of the forces acting on blood drops is gravity. And like blood, water, any other liquid, when a drop is formed, unless there's something other than gravity acting on it, the drop falls straight down. Drip stains are just that, blood stains that are a result of primarily gravity acting on a blood source. So individual blood stains, usually circular on horizontal objects, are shown. You can have drip stains on walls. However, those are characteristic by being long and thin. And there were no such stains on either of these walls.
Are you familiar with the phrase distribution cone or cone of distribution?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what we mean when we use those words.
I testified earlier about looking at characteristic of radiating bloodstains. We start our examination in 2 dimensions. And a fan-shaped distribution of stains is a radiating distribution back to the pizza slice. Actually, blood travels in 3 dimensions. So blood that's coming out of some blood source, and a blood source is kept generic because it can be many types of objects, not just people. The blood will come out in a cone, and that cone increasing top to bottom, left to right, as the cone goes, the blood goes forward in that cone. Very similar to a megaphone in appearance. And we refer to that 3-dimensional distribution as a dispersion cone.
Can there be voids in a dispersion cone?
Among other places, yes, sir.
What is a void?
A void is an absence of blood in an otherwise continuous blood stain pattern, which is a little subjective in determining the presence of a void, since an absence of blood may due simply to the fact there was no blood put on that given area. What we look for to strengthen the presence of voids is a obvious break in a pattern. Best example would be thinking of it as a shadow effect, where there's a circular object on the wall, a dispersion cone impacts that wall, and that dispersion cone is primarily going to be of blood drops that create spatter stains. If that circular object, clock or plate, is removed, it has blocked blood from going onto the wall. So the spatter stains will stay on the object and leave a clear, unstained or void area on the wall.
Did you have void areas or potential void areas in this particular scene as well?
Yes, sir. There was one area I looked at as a potential void.
Which area was that?
That was on the wall near the window.
Okay. And so if we go back to that overall photograph that shows the scene from a wide angle, which I think is 558. Yes. 540 is the number. Thank you. So we're looking now at 540 displayed on the screen behind you and on the screen to my left. Which wall are you talking about has a potential void?
The wall on the right half of the screen. I think that's the south wall.
Should be the south wall.
And we have a distribution of stains in the southeast corner that has aspects of a dispersion cone, but not enough that I felt comfortable saying it was a dispersion cone. It's a distribution of stains that decrease as we go up from the floor along the wall. And just above the letter B as in boy on this baseboard, very near the vertical scale that runs along the window that I'm pointing out with the pointer, there is an open area between, I believe it was labels B40 and B46. That shows an absence of blood.
You mentioned that when we first started talking about voids, that it could be that just no blood went to that area.
Yes, sir.
Could a person standing between a victim that's expelling blood prevent blood from getting onto that area as well?
That's one option. Yes, sir.
What other options are there?
Some other object that might be present there. And one of the supports for, again, presenting a void, going back to the example I presented of the clock or circular plate on a wall, that object, if there, it would have blood stains on it, that the blood landed on that intervening object and not the wall. So I would be looking for spatter stains on any object that may have been what we call an intermediate target. So that can be a person or an inanimate object.
Okay. We've talked already that there was a bed in place there. Was there also an absence of blood on the bed frame?
Yes, per Sergeant Hubble, there was.
Okay. Is that something you would rely on to make your analysis of this particular scene?
Yes, sir. That, and as well as during my examination on scene, I looked at the ceiling in the southeast corner. I did my own examination of the south and east walls with the idea a second set of eyes never hurts. And then on the blue table currently shown in People's Exhibit 540, I examined that and did not find any bloodstains on that table.
The fact that there was a bed at some point in that corner, can you tell based on your analysis that some bloodletting occurred with the bed in place, and then somehow the bed is moved and more bloodletting is happening in that scene?
That would be a possibility, yes.
When you say that that would be a possibility, what are you basing that on?
The presence of blood stains on the mattress and the blood stains that are higher up on the wall. Though blood can travel several feet, so there could be an event on or near the floor that causes blood stains to be higher on the wall, but a bed in place as a horizontal surface could certainly be a item upon which the blood source could be present at the time of bloodletting events.
Is it clear from your analysis of this scene that for there to be blood below the bed level, that the bed had to have been moved at some point to allow blood to spatter onto those walls at a level lower than the bed?
Yes, sir, for at least some of the stains, because in looking at stain shape, if we have an elliptical stain, the tail of that stain points in the direction of travel of the blood drop that created that stain. And there were stains along the wall labeled A in People's Exhibit 540, where I noted that the direction of travel for the blood drops were basically horizontal or parallel to the floor at that point.
Okay. You mentioned earlier it's common for you to reference autopsy reports in your analysis and before you finalize your conclusions. Is it also common for you to reference lab reports?
Most definitely.
What would you be gathering from lab reports?
First, for bloodstain pattern analysis, I would be looking for DNA results. and then also results from DNA analysis on objects, including possible weapons, firearms, if they're involved in the case. So several disciplines other than just DNA for items that may have blood stains on them.
Were you aware that blood stains were swabbed in this room and submitted to the lab based on your analysis and the work you did?
Yes, sir.
Did you learn whose blood was on the walls?
On the outlet and yes, sir, on the outlet primarily.
Okay, and whose blood was it?
On,
I'm just asking you whose blood was it?
it was Gannon's.
Okay, and I think, were you just going to point out the outlet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead and point that out.
In basically the center of the screen on People's Exhibit 540. There's an electrical outlet near the southeast corner. The plate of the outlet is missing, but I saw photographs of the plate and the outlet itself showing a reddish substance. And then DNA results reporting that the DNA profile matched Gannon's.
I understand we're gonna have it in late, so we just produce proper DNA.
That's fair, Judge, and we are going to have that at some point. We're just not there yet. So, Mr. Griffin, in your training and experience in this field, do you submit swabs from every single blood stain from a scene like this to have that DNA analysis done?
I never have swabbed every stain, and I don't know anyone that has, because not all the swabs will be analyzed.
Okay. Is that because of just resources at labs and that sort of thing?
With my time at the CBI, yes.
Okay.
It was primarily a resource and time issue.
With the information that you had, that the outlet cover had Gannon's DNA based on the lab report that you were able to look at, in your expert opinion, does that make it likely that the rest of the blood in there is Gannon's blood as well?
I don't know that I would use the word likely, but
What word would you use?
to me, presence of a blood at that point and the stains in the area, I would expect Gannon's blood to be present elsewhere on that wall.
Okay. The blood staining that we see indicated in People's Exhibit 540 on that south wall on the right side, east wall on the left side of that corner, and then that pool of blood on the center of the floor there, not the center of the floor, but in that corner of that floor there. Is that significant to you as to the amount of blood that was expelled during whatever event expelled that blood?
Yes, sir.
What does that tell you?
First of all, looking at the southeast corner on the floor, I was shown photographs of the floor with the carpet and the pad in place, carpet and pad cut up, and told, if not actually in reports I received, that there was saturated blood in the carpet and the pad in that corner. That was identified as the DNA being Gannon's profile. This area measured on the floor under the carpet, the stained area measured approximately 20 inches by 20 inches. So looking at the context of the scene, as we call it, we have a blood source on or near the floor in this corner as blood is coming out of that blood source, and then spatter stains on the wall, all in the southeast corner of the bedroom, that are suggestive of some type of spatter producing event, a minimum of one on or near the floor.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that if you wouldn't mind going back. There you go. Did you have a chance to review the autopsy report in this case prior to issuing your final conclusion?
Yes, sir.
Prior to you issuing your final conclusion and reviewing that autopsy report, based on the work that you had already done in the scene, looking at photographs, visiting it, that sort of thing, did you make a preliminary assessment as to what types of events could have caused this type of blood pattern analysis or blood stain pattern?
I did, yes, sir.
What was that?
On February 26th, between approximately 1:15 when I finished my on-scene examination, and after packing up supplies, I met with Sergeant Hubble and Lieutenant
Mahalko?
Mahalko, and told them I would give them very preliminary result, nothing in writing. It could be subject to change based on additional information. And basically what I told him is, given the pooling and the spatter stains on the two walls and the nature of patterns that are there and patterns that are not, I would look at one of or a combination of three possible events. One event would be a shooting in which the wound is a penetrating wound, meaning there is no exit, since there were no defects that I observed anywhere in the wall or the floor. So one possible wounding mechanism is gunshot. A second possible mechanism would be some type of event that involved creating blunt force trauma, such as beatings and stompings. The third event or mechanism, we use them interchangeably, would be some type of action or energetic activity involving a bladed object. Not necessarily knife, but what I call a bladed object, generically speaking, or a combination of those three.
So when you say a bladed object, are you just meaning a sharp object?
Sharp object, yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned a penetrating gunshot, but you mentioned no defects were found. Did you not find any bullet holes in the walls or impacts on the floor or anything like that?
I did not. I did not find any of those.
Okay. Once you were able to get the autopsy report, what did that do regarding your preliminary opinion as to what types of events or mechanisms could have caused this bloodstain pattern?
In reading Gannon's autopsy report, it noted the pathologist reported blunt force trauma to Gannon's head, a penetrating gunshot wound, I believe, to the jaw, the face area, and then sharp forced injuries, bladed object injuries to the rest of his body, with, I believe, at least half of those being on his hands and his arms.
And specifically as it relates to that sharp force injury portion, 18 separate sharp force injuries. Is that right?
That's right.
I'm gonna have you go to flip all the way through to in that binder. We've got 3 exhibits in a section labeled for just you. And those are exhibits 684, 685, and 686.
Pardon me?
Yep.
Thank you.
Are you to that section there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we're talking about 684, 685, and 686, do you recognize those photographs?
I do.
How do you recognize them?
People's Exhibit 684 and 685 are among the 360 plus photographs I was given to examine as part of my examination and analysis for bloodstain patterns. People's Exhibit 684 is generally well-lit photo showing the walls in the southeast corner. The carpet and pad at the southeast corner no longer present. And People's Exhibit 685 is a very dark photograph with faint blue coloration showing in the image.
Are those sequence of photos, 684, 685, and 686, essentially overlaying 684 and 685 to get to 686?
Yes, sir. People's Exhibit 686 is an overlay I created using Photoshop software, which is an overlay is one technique that we use when documenting the effect of the use of Blue Star on scenes, balancing the darkness required for the Blue Star and some well-lit or good lighting to show the overall aspects of the scene. So the locations where there is Blue Star reacting can be seen better in an overlay.
Did you do this in this particular case because of the potential significance of this scene having been cleaned up? Meaning Blue Star would react to show a greater dispersion than what you're seeing in these bloodstain patterns?
Actually, my reason for doing it was simply to see what could be shown with the overlay of the 2 photos, regardless of any type of blood removal activity.
And what did this inform you as to your analysis?
The Blue Star showed positive reaction on both the south and the east walls and the southeast corner on the floor beneath where the saturated carpet and pad was.
Okay. Are these fair and accurate photos?
Yes, sir.
You're going to move for admission of 684, 685, and 686.
No objection.
684, 85, and 86 will be admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
May, go ahead.
Okay, so we've got 684 on the screen there. Is this just basically that same southeast corner of Gannon's bedroom with those same blood stain markers on the walls?
Yes, sir.
And then if we move on to 685, What is 685?
That is the photo taken in darkness after the application of the blue star.
Does this photo, as we're projecting it on the screen, is it brighter than what's actually printed out in people's 685 in that binder in front of you?
Yes, very much so.
What does this tell us when we see this sort of, I mean, to me, it looks like a constellation in the night sky or something. What does this tell us?
Blue star is a chemical that's used as a searching tool for diluted blood. And it is a presumptive indicator of blood. Blue star will react with non-blood, but it's designed to go react primarily, or to react and show the presence of diluted blood.
So let me ask you a question, just to clarify really where I want to go with this. And that is, this looks like more than 54 marker potentials. Why are we seeing more in this than we see when we look at the overall normally lit photographs with the markers stuck to the wall?
The bright blue color from the blue star would indicate areas of possibly diluted blood being present on scene on both the walls and the baseboard and the floor.
No way to tell for sure whether that, all of those spots would be blood though, correct?
Correct, not without sampling and good luck.
Okay. And if we could go on to 686. Is this the overlay of 684 and 685?
Yes, sir.
Again, is this brighter than what's printed out in people's 686 in the binder in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Why do we not see, I'm looking at the floor with that bigger blood stain on the concrete there. Why is that part not blue, even though that's blood?
There could be a couple of reasons for it. One is the amount of blood might be so minimal that the blue star has no reaction with it, and therefore no reaction as shown in the other areas. Could also be due to the spraying of the luminol, the blue star, and areas that might receive more of the blue star reagent than other areas.
Is luminol and blue star essentially the same thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Based on what you're seeing in this particular scene, I'm going to make an assumption in the way I'm asking this question. If that's all a result of what happened to Gannon, based on your reviewing this scene and the autopsy report, is it likely that Gannon would not be up and walking around after suffering this attack?
From bloodstain pattern analysis, I can say that with it being Gannon's blood, he's on or near the floor for at least one, or in some cases, a minimum of 2 impact events, spatter producing events. But I'm not able to opine on his mobility in relation to that.
Well, you reviewed the autopsy report, correct?
Yes, sir.
There's 4 blunt force trauma injuries to the head, right?
Yes, sir.
There's also the gunshot to the left chin / jawline.
Yes, sir.
In that autopsy report, it has trajectory of the bullet through the head area of Gannon,
Yes, sir.
including potentially, according to the doctor, that it severed the spinal column.
Yes, sir.
So can you not make a likelihood determination based on that information in conjunction with your scene?
Agree. Sustained.
Okay. As far as your report, we can take the photo down. As far as your report, we've already talked about the contents of it being based on lots of different things, right?
Yes, sir.
Your training and experience goes into producing this report,
Yes.
photographs,
Yes, sir.
access to and review of other expert reports like the autopsy report and crime lab report, including DNA.
Yes, sir.
Would it be helpful for the jury to have access to your report in some point after you're on the stand?
Sustained.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move for admission of People's Exhibit 682, which is his report, and that would be pursuant to CRE 1006.
I object to the report actually going into evidence, Your Honor.
Yeah, well, let me see the report. Thank you. The objection is sustained on a little bit different grounds. First of all, this is an expert report. To the extent that it requires expertise to understand any of the items that are contained in the report, the jury would not have this expert with them at the time to try and understand what the report meant. So there's not an expert to explain the items in the report that require expertise. To the extent that the report contains opinions that have already been offered by the expert, the report is cumulative to the expert's testimony. So I will deny admission of Exhibit 683.
Okay, thanks, Judge.
Change
And
this back.
yep, I'll retrieve that from you, and then that is the conclusion of my questions.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm well, thank you.
All right. I want to ask some questions, and if I'm incorrect, just let me know. The blood stains, were you able to determine kind of the size of those blood stains?
For the ones on the wall,
Ones on the
yes,
wall.
sir, they were 1 millimeter or less in size.
And what would that indicate to you? Would that indicate low velocity, medium velocity, or high velocity?
We don't use those velocity terms in bloodstain. What the size indicates is a spatter producing event. So that blood is broken up by some type of energetic activity.
Can you tell, based upon the size of the stains, what was the event that caused the spatter? And just for example, my understanding is like a gunshot is going to produce smaller spatter than blunt force trauma. And so based upon the size of the blood stains that were on the wall, can you make a determination or an educated guess on the mechanism?
No, sir. You're correct in that generally blood patterns produced by gunshot wounds create smaller blood drops and therefore smaller stains than you get with blunt force trauma. But based on the size of the stains, I don't feel that I can eliminate an event.
Is that because that it had been there, it appears there have been some effort to clean that? Or is that because of the way that the Blue Star picks it up? Or is there some other type of reason that we're not able to use the size of the blood stains to make a determination of the mechanism?
I would say it's a combination of the apparent removal of blood stains such as by, however you said, washing or cleaning,
Okay.
and the ability of the blue star to um, um, indicate the presence of diluted blood whose stains may be too small to actually see.
Okay. The gunshot wound to like the underside of the chin, what type of blood spatter would you expect that to create?
The term that we apply to blood associated with gunshot entrance wounds is called the back spatter. It's blood that has blood droplets that have come back towards the direction of force. So I would be looking for primarily blood stains, 1-2 millimeters in size, maybe less.
Okay. Or, I'm trying to think. The gunshot wound, since that was only an entrance wound, would he have had to be facing the wall for any of the blood spatter to come from the gunshot wound?
Not necessarily facing the side of his head, could be positioned so a dispersion cone partially goes that way towards the wall.
And how close would he have had to been to the wall for the gunshot wound to cause the blood spatter?
There's no hard limiting data for that. It's usually looked at as being within 4 to 6 feet.
Okay. And so is the term like low velocity, medium velocity, and high velocity, is that no longer used in your field?
That's correct.
Okay.
Swigstein worked on those terms and replaced them.
When did you do that? A while ago?
Swigstein, we formed in 2002, so somewhere in the mid 2000s.
Okay. But I mean, there still is, my understanding is the mechanism will produce different size droplets of blood to spatter. So something that is contacting at very high velocity will make smaller blood stains. Something at a medium, blunt force trauma used to be referred to as medium velocity because it's kind of a medium speed of the blood flowing out. And then there was low velocity, that can come from like a knife wound or something like that. Is that so generally a premise?
It's still generally looking at the preponderance of stain size. Yes, sir.
Are you able to make a determination based upon the size of any of the blood spatter that was on either one of the walls, whether they were caused by a sharp object like a knife wound or whether they were caused by something that'd be more akin to what we would call medium velocity in the old days of blunt force trauma?
I'm not able to.
Can you tell how many events took place to cause that blood spatter?
A minimum of 2 based on the dispersion of the blood and the direction blood drops have traveled. So the minimum is the best I can offer.
Can you offer a maximum?
No, sir.
Could it have been many? 10?
Again, I can't put a number to it, sir.
Okay. Would any of the events had to have occurred above the bed? Because we talked that some of them had to occur below the bed based upon where the spatter was. There's anything indicating that any of them would have had to occur above the bed?
I think it's possible. Yes, sir.
Anything that you saw that would indicate one more than the other?
No, sir. Not given the potential for cleanup.
You reviewed the autopsy?
Excuse me?
You reviewed the autopsy in this case?
The report, yes, sir.
You're aware there were also 2 bullet projectiles found in the pellet case? when Gannon was recovered?
I'm not remembering it independently, sir.
Okay. You didn't see anything in that room that would indicate an object that had been struck by a bullet?
Correct, I did not.
And lastly, you're not just here out of the goodness of your heart.
No, sir.
You're getting paid by the district attorney's office.
Yes, sir.
How much are you getting paid?
Our company rate is $295 an hour.
And do you know how many hours you put in on this?
I don't remember the billing hours I did for my on-scene analysis and the report. It's more hours than I billed.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Redirect.
So we got a discount?
You can't tell.
You were asked about different sizes of these, the potential for different sizes by Mr. Tellini. You testified previously, though, that each one of these was 1 millimeter or less. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did the fact that this area appeared to have been cleaned up impair your ability to find bigger and smaller size blood stains on this wall?
That's possible, yes.
You were asked about the number of events and you said minimum of 2, but you could not give a maximum.
That's correct.
In reference to that, you obviously saw the autopsy report.
Yes, sir.
So could it have included enough events to include 4 blunt force trauma injuries, 18 stab wounds, and 1 gunshot wound? Can it go that high?
It's possible, factoring in that incised wounds such as were reported for Gannon's hands and arms, they can act as blood sources as well to produce spatter stains.
Meaning, let me break in there. Do you mean that an arm might be moving and causing blood to fly off the arm?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I have.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Mr. Griffin? No? All right. Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
Council approach, please.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.